Okay, time for case building is up. Now we will start the debate. But before that, I would like to inform you once again that this debate is going to be recorded for documentation and publication purposes. I hope you all don't mind that. Also, I would like to inform that Team Motion Launch still have not sent their speaker roles and speaker names. Please, for Team Motion Launch, could you please send your speaker names and speaker roles to chat immediately? Thank you. Okay. All right, let's start this debate. Acting as the government team for this debate is the team from Motion Launch with Miss Jen as the first speaker, Miss Rachel as the second speaker, Miss Kaitiana as the third speaker, and the reply speech will be delivered by Miss Jen. Then acting as the opposition team for this debate is the team from SMA Negeri 2 Tangsel B with Miss Anissa as the first speaker, Miss Sela as the second speaker, Miss Chandrika as the third speaker, and the reply speech will be delivered by Miss Anissa. Before you start your speech, please tell us your POI preference between via chat or unmuting your mic. Now we come into our debate today. To open the case from the government team, I would like the first speaker from the government team, Mr. Jen, to speak.
Hello. Wait a second. Okay. Am I visible and audible?
Yes, you are both visible and audible.
Hello?
Hello, you're audible.
All right, it's cool. My POI preference is just to unmute yourself. So yeah, best of luck. I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. The existence of God is the only hope of some people, and it is the only thing that holds religions to be able to proliferate themselves. Because otherwise, when your relationship to God is only personal and spiritual, it will be as unpopular as spiritualism right now, or it'll be as trivial as even yoga, we think, right? Religion will be demolished under the opposition side. And the reason that you cannot do that is because religion is important. 2 arguments for my speech. Firstly, why this is not in an individual's interest to do this. Secondly, why is God so important? So first argument, right? Why is it not in your interest to do this as an individual? We think that the justification for this debate should be this, right? It should be utilitarianism from the perspective of an average individual. And we say that the reason you cannot make this decision is because of 2 things. Firstly, you do not know if this is going to be beneficial, because disclosing it to the public means that you are going to let everyone know this, right? You're probably going to let it out on the internet, and people will know this without any filter, and their impact is something that you actually cannot predict. But actually, what you definitely know is that religion means everything for some people in this world. We think that you shouldn't take that away. Secondly, you have an interest to make society stable, right? There are likely going to be multiple reactions, and the society is likely going to be unstable. Like, some people are going to be in extreme denial, or some people are going to be extremely denouncing people who uphold their religion up till now, because look, your faith is a lie. God doesn't exist, right? We think it is not your interest as an average person to cause this kind of harm to the world, to be the cause of this conflict. That's why it's not justified. On to my second argument. Why is God so important? We think that actually the importance of all religions is the sense of comfort that God actually exists. Because the characteristic of God is that God does miracles to believers, which are things that spiritualism cannot offer you, for example, right? Which are things that, you know, your regular day job or your dreams cannot give you, actually. And also, God gives fair karma to the good and bad people by giving them, the corresponding life events. Like, if you're a good person, you'll receive good things. Also with heaven and hell as well, right? We think that these are things that are exclusive to God, and without God, you will not believe in these. What's the problem in the status quo? Science is rising, atheism is rising, anti-religious forces are rising because people are getting more pragmatic, right? With the existence of capitalism, for example, and they will only believe things that they can see and that can actually do something for them. But when the world is unpredictable, often cruel, you have economic crisis, family problems all the time, you have actually very little control of what will happen in your life, we think that God is necessary to balance this as a source of hope, right? Before I go into my layers of analysis, let's put a frame that these benefits accrue to all religious people in the world, maybe like 75% of all the people who are living on Earth right now. And keep in mind that opposition will likely trade this for benefits that accrue only for a small number of people, like to atheists maybe, or to terrorists or whatnot, right? And we think that they have to prove why that's going to be more important than our benefits, which apply to all people, right? What happens with this motion? Three things. Firstly, we think you have less hope in life if you disclose the information, because people, if they do not have a grand plan in life, they do not have a guardian angel when they are doing their efforts at working, right? They will not feel safe with every effort that they do. Even if they do this effort, they know that you might not win your next competition, for example. They know that you might not get the job that you want to get to, right? Particularly poor people, suicidal people who cannot see hope in life and whose current grasp only lies in God and in the belief that somehow things will be better and God will make that better, right? In opposition, they will probably end their life on the spot or lose all hope in life, right? We think that you do not want to be the person who caused that. You do not want to know that. You do not want to hear the news of somebody ending their life because they realized that God actually doesn't exist. Even if the scenario isn't that bad, when you know that you do not have a divine backup, we think that what you'll do is keep on questioning, is my decision actually correct? Is what I'm doing actually, going to receive appreciation, for example? Am I going to receive a reward in the future, right? We think that this is not going to be a good way to live for the people who currently subscribe to religion. On government side, God will be divine backup. Even when the plan doesn't happen instantly, you will still have the hope that the future will be better because you are a believer in God, right? Even in your, in your toughest circumstances in life, you will still have hope and you will still hold on to life. Something will actually happen because God is actually there for you, and there is that kindness in the world, right? And you do not actually need to prove that. We do not actually need to prove that they will definitely get that success, because we think that life goes up and down. Sometimes they that you get on our side. We think there are a lot of bad things that cannot be punished by the law. Things like bullying, things like domestic violence or fraud. To prevent that in the status is the knowledge that God watches you. It's not government's burden of proof to prove why God's supervision 100% deters people, but this is extra assistance that can help people do good, which works for some people, but you completely lose that in opposition. Moreover, we think in our side, we have the interest to do good because there will be a reward in heaven. This is good for people who don't see the self-benefit of being altruistic, of being, of actually helping other people and following good moral things, right? Which are most people nowadays. We think, therefore, our side is going to be a much kinder world than opposition. Thirdly, all religions will be only as popular as yoga or reading books in opposition. That is the level of popularity that you can get, like in the status quo with spiritualism, which doesn't have a God, right? Although people dedicated their entire lives to proliferating the religion, this is people like the Pope, like the ulamas, like all priests, which devoted their life for this. Instead of picking a job in capitalism, which might earn them more, for example, all of their altruistic sacrifice will be meaningless when you actually publish this information. Therefore, you are taking away the meaning of life and the identity of people who currently hold that religion. We think that is something you do not want, right? If opposition wants to say that people will speak in the name of God for self-benefit, that can self-correct, we believe, right? You can actually criticize that information and you can make it more moral again. And that isn't what the majority of the status quo religion actually looks like. The majority of that looks more like the Catholic Church right now, which is actually even leaning to the support of homosexuality, right? That all of those can self-correct. We think that it's far more important to keep the benefits of God, of hope, vote for our side.
Okay, the first speaker from the government team spent 7 minutes and 25 seconds. Next, to open the case from the opposition team, this is the first speaker from the opposition team, Anissa.
For PRI, could you just unmute your mic? Ladies and gentlemen, let me remind you that religion are spiritual beliefs that believe that we have a higher controlling power over us, which is God. In our current status quo, we see how much religion divides us, how much it separates us as human overall. Because in our current status quo, people are so extremist toward their religion to the point where they become hateful towards other things that are unlike their religion. For instance, even though Islam is a beautiful religion, people still do think that the name of Islam is like the name of Islam, like jihad, which is striving for the praiseworthy aim. But they take it too illiterate when they purposely go to the nearest church and bomb themselves. They even convince their children or wife to do the same thing. This is a real case that happened around 2017 or 2018. We believe that disclosing this information would less intensify that hate and that separation surrounding humanity today. We also believe that it should be a moral obligation to disclose such important knowledge. In this case, God isn't real to the public, because God or religion is something that very much determines one's life in a very impactful way. That is why our goal is to achieve a world where we are less divided as humans. We celebrate and champion the thought of us being one, humans. We also want to achieve a world where people know the truth about something that determines their whole life. Now, before I'm moving on to my arguments, I'm going to rebut what the proposition team said. So they said that some people are going to be in extreme denial. The thing is that we never know if God is actually real or not. For years, religion has always been abstract, and miracles sometimes can be explained by science. Note how he mentioned, says the motion says that we assume everyone will accept. When we reveal this to the public eye, we never said that we're going to force everyone into believing what we said. And if they have strong faith, we do not mind. Well, we're just revealing to the public eye to combat the harms that religion has bring to humanity, and not for the atheists, which I will explain later on my second argument. They also said that our side will be a kinder word than side of opposition. But panels, notice what they're imposing is what our current world situation looks like. People do not know the truth of God. No one knows if if it is actually real or not. But panels, their side already have bad people in it. Can they guarantee that bad things won't happen on their side when it already happens in our current world? Now, my first argument is why it's justified. So we have to acknowledge that this is the truth, that God is not real, because that God is not real, because panels, there is still no real proof that God really exists. But we can see people still believe in God. What we have to realize is it is every people's right to believe or not believe in God. We are still questioning what is the purpose of them disclosing this. At first place, people are believing in God because they really believe in it, that they are believing this even without thinking of what people's perspective about this. Like when we have to remember religion defines us, even if it is Islam, they still bomb themselves or jihad. Morality does not need to be from religion. It can be from basic life norms that are planted in our lives, like what our parents are implying to our daily life, how they teach us from our birth. Religion is personal trust and personal spiritualism, and people are free to believe in any religion. What people are trusting depends on what perspective they trust. This is why there are so many different perspectives, and that's why people have different religions. By this statement, it already brings that even without them knowing God existed, they still believe in it. That even if people influence about God is not real, they will still hold tight on their trust. And next is the fact that God has always been abstract and we never actually know if it is real or not. Maybe their side of the house might say that most religion bring positive things toward the society. But here's the thing, when we're actually talking about the positive things about religion in the first place, about how religion tells us not to kill anybody or not to marry our own siblings, what both sides need to know, both sides need to notice those kinds of things are already prohibited by science in the first place. And stuff like being kind, etc., it's already prohibited by the social norms in the first place. Let's take a look at Korea, for example, where most of the citizens are atheists. If religion is actually accurate and helping others to avoid negative action, bad things won't happen in the first place, because what side government is worried about is how the base of moral is gone and people would go crazy. But bad things will still happen on both sides, but our side will give more benefit. Then why on the countries that most of the citizens are atheists, but they still have good norms, like they don't kill each other and many other examples that their side might see. But at the end of the day, these people these people are not going to kill other people or bad things, because it's planted in their minds that it is wrong because of the social norms that are already existed. So now, moving on to my second argument is we will end all intolerance and fights about religion. In our status quo, both sides can deny that most of the time religion have brought up so many fights and anything other than peace to humanity as a whole. It is because of how any religion believe that they are true and right one. When we reveal to the public eye that God does not exist, which is a true statement, based on the motion, people will put their difference aside. Hate towards a specific religion will fall. Like, for example, how Muslims are facing hate in America because of the 9/11 accident. Every terrorist incident was always told that it is always the Muslims. By revealing to the people that God does not exist, we are deleting that mindset. We are proving that Muslims are never the problem. It's the person, not the religion. Also, how in conservative country that are based on religion, minority would feel free. Like Indonesia, for example, the majority of people are Muslim, right? And most of the time, there are lots of discrimination against the minorities, such as Christians, Buddhists, and Hindus. How in schools they would feel discriminated just because they have different belief. This would delete that. You would see people say stuff like, what is your religion? Just as based if you're going to hate that person or not. So what I tell you is that disclosing information would less intensity that hate and separation surrounding humanity. And that is why, ladies and gentlemen, we think it does not change anything, because we believe that they are still going to hold tight on their choice. And for all those reasons, I'm proud to propose.
Okay, the first speaker from the opposition team spent 7 minutes and 23 seconds. Next, to continue our debate, I would like to call upon the second speaker from the government team, Rachel.
Check, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Am I visible?
Yes, your camera
okay.
is also visible.
Okay, sorry. I couldn't see myself. Okay. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Op is basically trying to debate as if they are disclosing the information, somehow religion will be abolished and terrorism will be over and everyone will be happy because there's a social norm. I think that's just really simplistic compared to the nuance that Jen Huff brought to you, right? Before, I'm going to talk about 3 points in this debate. Firstly, how in principle we should not do this motion. Secondly, how we're going to disincentivize good deeds and how people can't even comprehend the information. And thirdly, I'm going to explain how individuals, extremely vulnerable ones, still need a mythical being or figure like God that can be reliable in their life. First, before that, 4 points of framing as to why side op already loses debate. Firstly, given that we're not shamans, we're just debaters and we're just average reasonable person, and we're realistic and pragmatic human beings, we have to explain the reasoning, how the people are going to, for example, accept this information. Even though they will believe that God will exist, they can not accept the idea, and there can be a cognitive dissonance. This is a burden that OpSite needs to answer. Secondly, given that there's no God, the concept of heaven and hell is also disordered in side opposition when they disclose the information to religious people. So in Abrahamic religions, God is supposed to be there to pick you up and bring heaven to you on Judgment Day. If they know that there's no God and there's no Judgment Day, how will they react? I think they're going to get crazy over it. But thirdly, if there's no God, that means that Bible versus validation and devotion is meaningless, because most of Bible verses are from God, right? Oh yeah, God said this, therefore you should follow it, for example. And if this information, the disclosure of the information enables a meaningless life for a lot of public, because the vast majority of people in this world are still religious and they have religion, at least if they're not religious, it's already bad. But fourthly, understand that even though there's altruism promoted by social norm, we're not debating about that. We're debating on how religion and God is important sense of role model, sense of hope. I think they should change the way they portray this world. Moreover, first point, right, regarding principle. We told you that in terms of average reasonable person, is to make this stable society. We don't want to assume whether or not they deny or accept this idea, for example. Moreover, we cannot assume people's reaction, especially a best kind of reaction towards this information, for example, because there are certain information that should be disclosed, like things like terrorism, for example, or things like really secretive information, classified information that the government keeps until today. Exactly why I don't know what kind of secret that government is like keeping, right? Therefore, what we can prove to you is there's more tendency to be denial. Why? Because there's the rise of right-wing populism, more conservative, more religious people, and white evangelicals, for example. Muslim and Catholic countries are rising, for example. Therefore, there's a lot of thick in the cultural traditions, which means they rely on God, for example, to go on their religion, for example. So when God is gone, then there will be a tendency to deny the idea that they have to change the way they operate the religion, or at best case scenario, when they accept the idea that God does not exist, they will still continue fighting, for example, for which philosophy of religion that is the best. Catholicism versus Protestantism, for example, or Muslim versus Hinduism in India will still exist even though God does not exist, for example. So when they told you that God and religion is detrimental to one's life in an impactful way, we agree to that, and therefore, we should not do this motion regardless of the effect, for example. The second point regarding incentive, right? Jen told you that there will be no incentive to do good deeds because moral compass will be disordered. The only response we get is, oh, there will be radicalism and terrorism will be worse in our side, and in their side somehow this will be over. Understand that in our side, religion still will be having a counterbalance because religion needs followers to stay alive, exactly because there's a role model to look up to like God or Jesus or Muhammad. Means that the followers can correct the religion because Muhammad said so, or Jesus said so, or Jesus said like, you should love everybody regardless, you should love your neighborhood, whatever, neighborhood and whatever. That's the reason the Catholic Church getting more progressive, because they are able to follow these kinds of things, because like the Pope, the role model of the religions this so. But why Pope cannot exist inside opposition, right? Because the fact that the God, which is the role model of the religion, does not exist, then things that he said does not exist. Like Paul being the first Pope, whatever. Therefore, like it's going to be really hard in terms of like changes of the structure of religion, for example. Other than that, God actually exists to stop war. The reason why God came to this world in Catholic, for example, is that he wants to stop people to be mean or something like that. Therefore, even though after war ends, all the terrorists feel suicidal because their life was meaningless in itself. But moreover, the sense of role model is gone. So things like 7 deadly sins, Muhammad's polygamy value, 10 commandments of God, miracles of God like Noah and other prophets. People did all of these commandments in a way because God did it, and God said that's detrimental for your ability to enter heaven. But why it's so problematic? Because it's because the moral compass of people is still problematic. That's the reason why a lot of people adopt religion. But other than that, people cannot comprehend or digest, right? Because like the manifestation of religious people's life is like lifelong internalization, devotion, and special cases, fanaticism. So the idea will make them really crazy that God does not exist, even though they believe that. So moving on to an extension, how individuals still need mythical being, right? 3 reasonings. Firstly, sense of hope, because a lot of people like pray to Han Jesus, etc., etc., because they want a sense of hope when they're really poor, they want to win a competition, for example. But secondly, there's a sense of belonging because God loves you. And in every religion, for example, there's no idea that you love everybody. It's when God told you to do so. But thirdly, sense of leadership, because there's the Vatican. But why is it so important, right? Because in a capitalistic world, it's so hard to hold on and survive too, when you have no wealth, when you're poor, and you have no friends or family, no one to rely on, and no mental support because your family is so hateful to you because you're gay or you're lesbian. God is the only individuals you can rely on, even though you're not religious, for example. Sometimes it feels good and it feels calm and tranquil when you pray to them, for example, even though you're not so religious in this case. So people that are sinful can still like hold on to God. Like when you're like a sex worker, gay or lesbian, that things are condemned sinful, you can still go back to God. Inside opposition, religion still exists, sinful ideas and values still exist. But in their side of the house, you cannot pray to God and you cannot hold on to a reliable mythical figure that will not hate you, because the idea is there's no one to actually love you, because you have to rely on other human beings that might be really hateful to you, because the idea of sin is still existing inside opposition. It's still better in our side of the house because there's God to actually be relied upon by a lot of people that is excluded and eliminated in status quo. We win this debate.
Okay, the second speaker from the government team spent 7 minutes and 21 seconds. To continue this debate, I would like to call upon the second speaker from the opposition team, Stella.
So for the POI, you can just unmute yourself. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, we believe that every human deserves to know the truth, including the fact that God does not exist. And therefore, we believe by letting them know that God does not exist, it is way, way better in our side. But before going into my extension, I would like to respond to their statement about religion is everything. Like, for example, giving hopes and karma rules like you do good and you get good, or you do bad and you will get bad, and etc. And without religion, moral is nothing. Yes, we do agree that after telling God does not exist, religion will be broken and it will make a world that, well, so-called as will filled with atheists. But is being atheist fully wrong? No, even after knowing God does not exist, we still have the moral. Atheist people doesn't mean that they are moralist. And for karma rules, even if people do not stand with the karma rules anymore, they will still do good. Why? Because that mindset, that do mindset has been growing inside them. That is what they are. They believe, and they already have the habit of doing good. So even if without these rules, without these karma rules, they will still do good because it's their mindset, and it's really hard to change their mindset in the first place. So we find that statement about without religion, moral is nothing. It's very unexclusive, since in our side, we still give you a moral for people, and life is still meaningful even without religion. Now, going on to my extension, which is the long-term effect, and why in our side we still give you better long-term effect on rather on their side. I have 2 layers here. The first one is stopping wars and commotions, and the second one is removing bad stigma and bad stereotypes. Now, going back to my first layer, which is stopping war and commotions because of religion difference. Ladies and gentlemen, please notice how humans are always into war. One of the most offensive topics that can easily start a war is religion. People are so sensitive about religion, and if it no, thank you. And if it tell them God does not exist, it breaks all religion, because all religion does believe God exists. But even if the world has no religion anymore, it still brings benefit in our side. And in the first place, people doesn't even know that God exists or not. And even if they know, they will still believe that they will still they will still do moral obligation, because a religion is something you are comfortable in. You choose to be in a religion because you like, or maybe your parents teach you about the obligation, like for example, salat, fasting, or etc. And either way, even if people that know that God does not exist, they are still going to keep this moral obligation because it is what they are comfortable with. Because we do not forbid them to do any moral obligation. But there might be a slight change to this regulation, like such as not too strict regulations. But the society will still teach you moral. And you don't need to be in a certain religion to teach moral, and therefore it is still possible for you to know moral and create a moralful society. And also talking about regulation in a certain religion, let's take an example in Islam. For example, Kurban that you do every year. Imagine how many cows or goat are being killed per year. And without having this regulation anymore, without Kurban anymore, we will have more livestock. And some people actually arguing about this. They do not like this Kurban thing. They do not want any animal to get killed. Well, ladies and gentlemen, without religion, without this regulation, we do not have to argue about religion regulation anymore.
Yeah,
Since religion is not happening in the first place. No, thank you. And Kurban is only one of the example about moral obligation, and there is so much more moral obligation, moral regulation out there that people can argue about. Now going on to my second layer, which is in our side, will be more easier when it comes to getting rid of the bad stigma and bad stereotypes about people who believe in a certain kind of religion. First of all, there is so many kind of stereotypes when we talk about people that believing in some certain kind of religion, like stereotypes like Muslim as a terrorist and etc. etc. And if we try to tell these people that religion is just an abstract belief with no clear or living proof, then they will stop the stereotype that has been growing among the society. And now the people who believe in some religion will not face any discrimination that creates because of their religion stigma, the religion stigma or stereotype that has been growing in the society. Like for example, 9/11 accident. After this accident, people end up being very, very racist into the Muslims by generalizing all Muslims are terrorists. But if we believe that God does not exist, it will help. It will help limit the chances of indoctrination of no clear religion. And also, this kind of stigma and stereotype is going to be harder to solve in their side of the house, because no matter what, people still see Muslims as terrorists, for instance, in their side. Whether their side mechanism actually trying to spread awareness and so on is not going to be effective nor efficient. Because looking at our status quo, there is a lot of information that a lot of discrimination that talking about Muslims are the terrorists and other stereotypes and etc. So compared to our side of the house, compared to our side, people not going to face this kind of scenario anymore. They do not face this discrimination anymore, because now people decide to stop believing in a certain religion. The moment they stop believing at it, the moment where they will stop facing discrimination that are created because of their religion beliefs. And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, our side has proved to you that we have the upper hand for today's debate, and I beg you to oppose.
Okay, the second speaker from the opposition team spent 7 minutes and 3 seconds. Next, to close the case from the government team, I would like to call upon the third speaker from the government team, Kariana.
Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay. I'm gonna start my speech. In 3, 2, sorry, wait, before I begin, you can just type the POI in the chat. I'm gonna start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panel, we think that the most heinous crime that an individual can commit is taking away a lifeline, taking away the idea that has kept people from going through their darkest days, taking away the idea that kept someone from killing themselves. For this reason alone, we are so proud to take this debate. But before we move on to my two clashes, firstly, does this align with the individual interests of society as our principal justification? And second of all, is the existence of God important? I'm gonna clarify what this debate is supposed to be about. Because the team that wins this debate isn't the team that proves to you that religion is harmful or not harmful, but it's a team that proves if there is a net harm or a net benefit from the belief that there is a God. This was a clear delineation that my second speaker made that hasn't been sort of regarded by side opposition at all. So on to my first question. Does this align with the individual interests of society, and thus making it principally justified? We already told you two main reasons to back this up under side proposition, which is, first of all, we don't know what the benefits or the harms are going to be because they are uncertain and we can't just assume there is going to be a benefit. But second of all, how this doesn't actually align with the interests of society because we're going to make an unstable society. What do we get in response? Two responses. Firstly, on how this concept of individuals actually living a lie. Three responses. Firstly, panel, I think the moment you subscribe to a religion, this is something you already opted into, right? The fact that there are gray areas and the fact that there are certainty was conceded even by religious leaders when they said, have faith, like nothing is certain but have faith. These are already conceded to when you go into religion. But second of all, even if this isn't true, literally side opposition still up until this point of this debate has the burden to prove why living a lie is so inherently unjustifiable, is so inherently harmful, right? Like we live in lies all the time, whether this be our parents lying to us when we were kids that Santa Claus exists, or government, for example, keeping information about the location of military bases, all for our own good. But even in our worst case scenario, side opposition can't call this out by saying, for example, oh, but at the end, we're told the truth and etc. Because realize that these are the types of things where in disclosing that there is no God, there is going to be a net harm, which I'm going to get into in my second clash. But then they also talked about Islamophobia, especially after the 9/11 incident. Panel, we really don't understand, like up until now, how side opposition is trying to solve Islamophobia or any type of sort of prejudice against religious people, right? Like panel, when they concede to a world without a God, when they actually disclose the information that God doesn't exist, then they are merely going to see anyone who is Muslim as two things. One, gullible and dumb, that they actually risk their life and kill the lives of so many people without a clear basis, without a clear justification. And second of all, malicious in and of itself, because this, having proved that there is no God, it's proven that this wasn't something that was a moral obligation by the religion. These people were just mean, and they had, for example, the willingness to kill other people. But my second question is the existence of a God actually important, and this should be the clash that is more championed in this debate, given that these are the tangible benefits or harms that we're going to be talking about. We already told you yes under this clash for a couple of reasons, talking about the importance of religion on so many actors. For example, for hope and moral compass, we get no response on things like how religion is there to give you a sense of hope, to give you a sense of belonging, to give you a sense of acceptance by your God, right? It keeps individuals hopeful with their life when they say, like, when they're praying for something for miracles to happen in their life. What do we get in response? Two things. Firstly, we get this notion that social norms already exist, and so making religion's role in this insignificant. Four responses to this. Firstly, panel, no. Realize that social norms are not enough. Why? Because being good in the face of the public and when society is surrounding you and doing the small deeds that you are doing, for example, to a homeless man or to your friends, are very different things. Side opposition is only going to incentivize people to do good in the face of the public, to do good when everyone is looking, at what you're doing. Inherently, under their side of the house, People are selfish and won't actually continually do these altruistic things. We won't actually continually do all of these good things when no one is looking. That is what's exclusive with a religion, because you're always told that, oh, God knows what's even inside your heart. It's not even your action that's in your heart that eventually will manifest into your personality and etc. Secondly, social norms aren't even constant. The idea of what is good or bad changes through time, right? These are the things that religion doesn't have, and so they have a more constant metric and more objective metric of what is good and what is bad. Thirdly, it's also convenient for side opposition to just be giving us all the good parts of social norms, because realize that social norms are actually bad. Social norms that you cannot be accepted if you are gay. Social norms that you are not enough if you are not skinny. Comparatively, what religion does is gives you a sense of belonging regardless of what sexuality you are, regardless of what you look like from the physical sort of outlook, right? And no matter what the societal standards are, these are the sort of like sense of belonging and sense of hope that is existed in society, because we have to concede with a religion, because we have to concede to the fact that obviously society is cruel, society is mean, they put a lot of pressure and sort of standards that are unattainable, that is gonna be like sort of mitigated when there is the fact that there is a God. In the worst case scenario, okay, social norms actually exist and they're pretty beneficial into making, you know, people do altruistic things. But the main differentiation that we have to note here is the fact that there is no self-fulfillment under their side of the house. People are doing good things just for the sake of doing good things. People aren't doing, you know, something good. And so like when there is a God, you know, you do something good and you feel so fulfilled from doing it. You feel like you have sort of like fulfilled your moral obligation, and you know that you're going to be rewarded by this when there is a God. These are the type of things that you get with social norms. You're just doing it for the sake of doing it. But second of all, they talked about radicalization and wars, because side opposition wanted to say that the root of all wars are religion, and when you take away the central dogma of God existing, we are able to mitigate all wars. Two responses. Firstly, panel no, wars and conflict doesn't come from the existence of God. It comes from the interpretation, or at least misinterpretations. This is crucial because side opposition wants to claim that this benefit, that there is like any type of religion, you're like, you know, that there's a text, for example, that talks about you need to fight and kill everyone who is not in the religion. Given that this doesn't exist, we don't understand how opposition had such a huge logical jump. Why is this clash so important? Because realize that what side opposition has given you is a premise without a conclusion. They deserve to lose this debate. We are so proud.
Okay, the third speaker from the government team spent 7 minutes and 29 seconds. Next, to close the case from the opposition team, I would like to call upon the third speaker from the opposition team, Chandrika.
Give me a moment, please. All right, starting. My speech in in 3, 2, 1. Panels in our side of the house, we try to. Oh wait, sorry. I'm so sorry for my POI preference. Just type in the chat, please. So we want to achieve a world where we are less divided as humans. We want to re-celebrate and re-champion the ideology of humans being one species, right? Secondly, we also feel like it is a moral obligation to tell people the truth about something that determines their whole life. And why is this important? Because unlike the third speaker stated, the kind of lie we live under is important because it is not about Santa Claus, it is not about tooth fairies at least. The kind of lie that the world will live in under their side of the house are the kind of lie that could grow hate, and it could attract discrimination because people feel like their God or their religion is better. Firstly, I'm going to talk about how religion divides humans. They say the existence of God is the hope for some people, and our side of the house, we won't have anything to hold on to or to pray to. Panels, they keep ignoring the fact that we keep on saying that God has always been an abstract idea. You never know the truth of his existence. By us telling them this, it's not going to change the fact that they can still believe, that they can still pray, they can still hold into the moral beliefs that they have. Note how we do not take the ability to do practices, even if they say that we say that God is not real. It is not going. It is probable. It could not change their practices because that's how it always been. Even if they serve God as their hope panels, we think that this actually only happens in very few scenarios because in today's reality, how many are there actually religious countries besides non-religious countries? And even in those religious countries, there are less people with thick beliefs in religious ideologies, right? They also brought out an example about how it will help societal people. Now, but I feel like this example is weak because firstly, let me characterize that suicidal people do not have hope in the first place. They do not see the good in anything, the good in eating, in taking care of themselves, let alone how could they believe in God? Suicidal people are people that are ill because of a depression, right? A condition in which they are decided by a chemical imbalance in their brain So it is not something that we can say that this will make suicidal people kill themselves. And in their side of the house, they portray spirituality as something unimportant. Panel spiritualism is a movement based on the belief that the spirits of the dead exist and they have the ability to communicate with the living, right? Reincarnation is also a popular part of spiritualism. But the point of spiritualism panels is when you better yourself as souls, for yourself, without external factors. Spiritualism is when you do good because you believe good will come back to you. Spiritualism is when you love another human being because a different human being has loved you. And their concerns on how hopeless people will have no hope that is not really invalid since there's still spirituality in our side of the house. Secondly, their concern is about how people will react when they find out God does not exist. Firstly, we say that in this world, people are already saying that God does not exist. But panels, the religious still don't believe it, and they still believe in the spiritual connection they have. And secondly, we think that in today's status quo, this world is not as ancient as before. People are not that wild. People are moralized, right? And another concern is also there will be no incentive to do good. We think that this statement is incredibly dramatized. Why so? Because we live in a modern world where humans are decently moralized. Their morals are not as bad as before. We don't live in an ancient world where killings or stealings are things we see in everyday life. My point is that humans are not as unmoralized as side proposition paint them to be. There will still be incentive to do good because people will still be filled with empathy or sympathy as their human nature. Besides, they must have lived years doing good habits based on their religion, etc. And it's impossible we say that it could suddenly change as dramatic as side proposition paint. But even if people has no incentive to do good panels, we live in a world where today there is law in everything we do. There is law that determines anything we can do. There are law with consequences, and there are also law enforcements to make sure you do no harm to others. Point is, we live in a modern world with rules and regulations to behave. And their concern is also like people will do good just because of the sake of doing good in it. But I don't see what's the harm in that. They said that Muhammad or like Jesus is a role model for people to do good things, but But I question how many percentage of the world, like how many are there people right now that actually uses Jesus and Muhammad as their role model? They see their actions every day and feel and say, oh my God, we need to do this. Oh, we need to do that. I feel like it's really little. Panels, we find it very funny that side government took an example of you were lied to as a child, but you were lied to as a child. But panels, religion and being lied to as a child is a different thing. Being lied about religion, something that you use to rule your life, is of course going to affect it. We mentioned harms that religion brings. If we bring truth to the public eye, these harms will be gone. Clearly, they haven't been paying attention. At the end of the day, what we're trying to advocate in our side of the house is peace, right? Because a bad interpretation of religion in the first place exists because of the religion itself. In our side of the house, those interpretation that leads to harm does not exist in the first place. Because maybe right now, a Palestinian children is being killed, or maybe another one just starved to death. How come? Because Palestine right now, as we all know, is under war by Israel, right? Purely because of land and because they think that their religion or their ideology is better than one another. These are the kind of things that we're concerned about in our side of the house and what we're trying to change for. In their side of the house, they paint the whole world as if everyone's religions, right? Everyone's hope to live is just because of God. When that's not the case, in today's status quo, there are actually more atheist people, or people do not believe in God, rather the ones that actually do. And for all those reasons, we're proud to oppose.
Okay, the third speaker from the opposition team spent exactly 7 minutes. Next up, this is the reply speech from the opposition team that will be delivered by Anissa.
Panels, how religion divides human. When they said that the existence of God is the only hope for some people, note how we do not take the ability to do their practices. Even if they serve God as their hope, we think this actually only happen if in very few scenario, because there are false religious countries and even more less people with such thick belief in those religious countries. They also said that our side will be a kinder world than a side opposition, they said that their side is kinder. But panels, notice what they are imposing is what our current world situation looks like. People do not know the truth of God. No one knows if it is actually real or not. But panels, their side already have bad people in it. Can they guarantee that bad thing won't happen on their side when it already happens in their current world? They also said that this helps suicidal people. This is a very weak example because suicidal people do not have hope in the first place. They don't see good in anything. The good in eating, taking care of themselves, etc. That is why suicidal people are people that are ill because of depression, which what they are needing is not about like people asking, oh, you need to pray more, when what this person is looking for is help, not about religious thing. We also do not understand why proposition team is picturizing spirituality really bad, when the truth is spiritualism is movement based on the belief that the spirit of the dead exists and have both the ability and to communicate with the living. Like reincarnation is also a popular part of spiritualism. The point of spiritualism panels is when you better yourself as souls. For you, without external factor, is when you do good because you believe good will come back to you, which happens because you believe in God, even if there is no conclusive evidence that towards this. They also say that there will be no incentive to do good. We think that their statements are over dramatizing this. Why so? We live in a modern world where humans are decently moralized, right? We do not live in an ancient world where killing or stealing are the things that we see in everyday life. My point is that humans are not as unmoralized as side proposition paint them to be. There will still be incentive to do good because people will still be filled with empathy or sympathy. Like even if people has no incentive to do good, panels, we live in a world where today there is law in everything we do. There is law with consequences. There are law enforcement to make sure you do no harm to others. Point is, we live in a modern world with rules and regulation to behave. This is why we why we believe that proposition team are over dramatizing their statement. They also said that why living in a lie is so bad. Panels, we find this very funny. Side proposition took an example of you where you lied as a child, where we're always living in a lie. But panels, religion and being lied to as a child is a different thing. Being lied about religion, something that you use to rule your life, is of course going to affect it. We mentioned the harms the religion brings. Panels, when we tell them that good does not exist, this is clear enough, even in the motion. It is clear enough that people believe it's so knowing that how much harm religion brings, it is better to just tell them the truth. So if you want a world where religion does not bring harm anymore, but people still can have moral, then vote for side opposition.
Okay, the reply speaker from the opposition team spent 3 minutes and 51 seconds. Next, to end this debate, here is the reply speech from the government team that will be delivered by Jen.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay. It's kind of like raining. Does the rain sound like disturbing?
No.
Okay. I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Side opposition is a side that wants to disclose a major information that God doesn't actually exist. That required a step-by-step analysis of why their benefits are likely going to happen, how it will actually change people for the better. If they did not prove that, as the person, you will regret your action because you became the person who took away hope from the world. 4 reasons that we win in this debate. Firstly, their benefits are uncertain. Notice that the only benefit that they actually bring is terrorism, right? But they have never provided to us a step-by-step analysis of how war is suddenly going to be solved, right? As an average reasonable person, why will you suddenly make peace after you sacrificed so much of your army, so many of your soldiers, so many of your brothers were killed? You will still be filled in grudge, right? Plus, my third speaker already explained that the cause of war from religion is actually misinterpretation, right? We think it was not because of the teachings that came from God from the very first place, and they will continue to be the enemy of the world and be radical. That's what she meant, right? Never any response to this. Second reason we win. Our benefits are unresponded. Things like having more hope, like having more interest to do good deeds and having more sense of belonging in this world, right? These are the things that are central to the meaning of life for people in this world. There was no negation to this. Only attempt to respond was these two things. They said that it's inexclusive because of social norms, right? Because people are inherently good, which is actually questionable, and there is law. Very questionable considering that crime still happen in this world anyway. Very questionable since domestic violence happens and people get away with it, right? Their responses were mitigatory at best. We think that they will only do good in their side when they're in a good state of life, when you do indeed have hope, when the world is on your side, right? When it's not the case, then you will do self-benefiting justifications to justify your actions like domestic violence because maybe you're stressed and you need to vent to your, to your wife, right? We think that that is a side that we do not want to defend. There was never a proof of why their degree of benefit and, teaching morality is going to be symmetrical or even, or even more than our side. While we have explained that God's exclusivity is his miracles and fair treatment to all people, right? Which makes people believe that there is indeed hope in this world and there is indeed going to be fair treatment for everyone. Next, they say that if people are moral, okay, they said that people are moral. If people are moral, exactly, you shouldn't take away their sense of hope in this world. Third reason we win, they did not engage to our worst case, that poor people and suicidal people will lose their hope because they are religious, right? Never any engagement to this. But we engaged to our worst case of radicalism and whatnot, right? Even in the worst case, we assert that this can self-correct because religion needs followers so they can, adjust to become more moral for their followers. And also, their first intention was world peace from the first place. All the prophets wanted that from the very first place, right? We think that at the end, religions will progress there, just like, religious institutions are teaching people to be less radical in the status quo. But fourth reason we win, even if you did not took my first 3 reasons, we think that we framed from the very beginning that our side affects more people. their side will take away the hope of 5 billion people in the world who still believe in religions, right? We framed this from the first speaker. There was never a challenge for this. We think that even if their benefits actually work, like, they actually stop terrorism, they stop stereotypes like Islamophobia and whatnot, right? We think it still doesn't matter because you take away the hope of most people right now. Even if terrorism gets solved, all the life of the other people, and maybe even the terrorists themselves as well, because now they have no purpose in life, you will take away all of that from those people. That is why we think we have won this debate because of an undisputed framing as well. And ultimately we win because we keep the hope in this world, and we are therefore a more moral human being than opposition.
Okay, and the reply speaker from the government team spent 4 minutes and 11 seconds. With the reply speech from the government team delivered, that leads us to the end of this debate. Thank you all for your participation.
Okay, hi everyone. So thank you so much for the debate. So while the judges are making their decisions, please kindly wait in the main room because we'll immediately announce the top 3 DAS speakers and also the 3rd place until the 1st place of the competition. So please stand by in the Zoom, yeah. Thank you and see you. And also for the educators and everyone who participated. So without further ado, I'm going to announce top 3 best speakers for REDC 2020. So a request from the committee, we're also going to take pictures. So I just want to remind everyone to turn on their camera because there's some dokumentasi that the panitia has to do. Okay, so top 3 best speakers. Before that, yeah, they also told me that this is the prize for the winner and the runner-up and the second runner-up, and also you will get voucher we have with the amount that I have provided you in the screen. Okay, now let's move on to the real announcement. So 3rd best speaker of REDC with average speaker score of 75.67. Congratulations, Jennifer Taruno from Motion Lounge.
Hello, Jennifer, can you turn on your camera so we can do a screenshot? Anyway.
Tasya, ini mau belakangan aja atau mau satu-satu aja fotonya?
Oh ya, belakangan aja.
Oke, nanti awan 3-3. Okay. Next, 2nd best speaker with the average speaker score of 76. Congratulations, Rachel Amadia Rosalini Sikatan from Motion Lounge. Now to the 1st best speaker, or just the best speaker of REDC 2020 with the average speaker score of 76.33. Congratulations, Katyana Indra Sasana from Motion Lounge. Congratulations for all the top 3 best speakers. Can you guys please turn on your camera because the committee has to do some documentation. Jennifer already, Katyana and Rachel. Oh, okay. Okay, committee tell me ya if it's already done. Yay, congratulations guys. Okay, so now we proceed to the champion announcement of REDC 2020. Let's start with REDC 2020 second runner-up or the 3rd place. Congratulations to SMAN 2 Tangsel C, Amadea Kara and Rania. Now to the REDC 2020 runner-up. Congratulations, SMAN 2 Tangsel B, Sela Anissa and Chandrika. And last but not least, our EDC 2020 champion. Congratulations, Motion Lounge, Tatiana, Jennifer, and Rochelle. Congrats for the winners, and also commiserations for every other participants. Yeah, so I think that will be all if there is no other announcement from the committee. Oh, foto dulu. Championnya foto. Okay, so I think dari SMAN 2 Tangsel ya, Kasya. Ya, SMAN 2 Tangsel, can you guys please turn on your camera? SMAN 2 Tangsel, can you guys turn on your camera? SMAN 2 Tangsel. Udah semua atas ya? Oke, lanjut ya. Oke, SMAN 2 Tangsel B, boleh gantian nyalain kameranya. Dua Tangsel B. Thank you. Okay, now for the champion, Motion Lounge.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Udah ada anything else from committee yang mau ditambahin?
Enggak, Kak.
Oke, kalau nggak ada ya udah you can leave the Zoom. Congratulations ya guys sekali lagi, and thank you